Hello, my beautiful babies, and welcome to God Emperor Dune Club, Session 6. Wow, we got a lot of stuff to talk about today, so let's just get right into it. Get rid of this. Oh no, wrong one. Let me get rid of this, and let me add this. So for this session, you need to read pages 383 through 459. And the last sentence of the last chapter, as his humanity slipped away, though, he found himself filled with more and more human concerns. Poor Leto. Poor Leto and poor Mineo. So let's jump right in here with chapter 36, Mineo caught slipping on cockblock duty. So the festival at On is over. And everyone is back at the Citadel, and Leto is pissed. He is super upset. He is talking to Mineo. He's like, the Duncan disobeys me. And Mineo is just like sweating it. He's terrified. He's so scared. He knows that Leto can smell how scared he is. And he's like, you don't respond, Mineo? What's up with that? Mineo's on worm watch. Like, he's just like, oh no, I'm going to get smushed today. He's so pissed. I've never seen him this angry before. Leto tells me we need to accelerate this wedding. We need to get this underway as soon as possible. But still, I have to test Siona first, but then wedding. And I told him not to see Nari and to avoid her, and it was an order, and he's doing it anyways, and I'm fucking angry. And Mineo's like, she initiates the meetings, dude. And he's like, oh, so you knew about this, huh? And he's like, oh, I'm sorry. She pities him. Like, he's just a Gola. She's just a dumb Gola, and she pities him. Don't worry about it. And he is like, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Duncans are incredible master fuckboys. Are you kidding me? Like, they get women wrapped around their little finger doing whatever they want. He is trying to fuck my girl, Mineo. Like, this is what's going on. And Mineo's like, I didn't know that you had absolutely prohibited them seeing each other. Okay, I didn't know. I'm so sorry. He's like, how long can I get a new Duncan? I need a new one. We got to get rid of this one. We're going to need a new one. He's like, maybe 1 year. I'll check in with the Leilaxu, but I think it might be like a year. He's like, order him. Order him right now. Get him set up, because like this is not working for me. And Leto laments that he can't say anything to his Huinery about it, because he's just like, I can't say no to my baby. So what are you going to do about this? I can't say anything about this. So what are you going to do about this? And meanwhile, Mineo is catching some worm signs. His eyes are glazing over. His hands are getting all twitchy. And Mineo's just like, oh no, fuck. And I don't know what possessed Mineo to ask a dumb question about whether Leto could mate with Hui. And Leto is just like, don't ever ask me that question again. And Mineo's like, never again, Lord. I'm so sorry. I'm going to speak to Duncan. I'm going to speak to Hui. And he's just slowly backing out. Slowly. And he leaves. And then he hears all this great thrashing. The worm takes over behind him. That was a really close one for Mineo. And the fish speakers hear Leto worming around in his room, super angry. And then they're all up Mineo's ass. So it's like out of the frying pan into the fire. Now the fish fingers are like, what did you say to piss off Leto? You know, like, I'll slit your throat right now. Like, why is he mad? And he's like, he's just really anxious to get married. And he's like, well, then hurry it up then. And he's like, I'm doing it right now. I'm doing it fucking right now. And while he walks away, he's just mentally cursing this careless Duncan who's putting them all in danger. And then he's just like, what am I going to do about Hui? Like, what am I going to do with these two fucking coconuts? This is the worst. Poor Mineo. Chapter 37, we have Siona's interview. So Leto is meeting with Siona at his little citadel. So he's got his main citadel in the Sarir, but he also has the little citadel that's like his own personal little space needle that he hangs out in. It's like 2 miles high and then goes like almost 2 miles. It's like almost 2 miles into the air, and then it's like almost 2 miles like under the earth as well. And he uses this little hidden portal that he made himself that is like off one of the spokes on the crypt, and he goes out into the sand and he's just like worming around and he's just having the best time. The sand feels luxuriously sensuous on his little worm body. And he's just scheduled a full day to relax. He's got a little bit of self-care to do today, and he just worms around. He pretends he's got no cares. He's restoring his worm self by returning to the desert. And he remembers earlier that morning, Mineo said that, Lord, there is a terrible violence in Siona. And he said she has the beginnings of adrenaline addiction. It's cold turkey time. Mineo's like, what? And he's like, it means that we're going to subject her to a complete withdrawal, a necessity shock. And I really love this idea of adrenaline addiction. Like we talked about this earlier in another stream, but people can become addicted to anything, and adrenaline addiction is a real thing. People don't really think about it, and it's totally like a thing. And I found myself where it's like I used to just feel like I needed to be like more and more stimulated all the time, and it's like now I'm like kind of trying to get off of that life and just be like, just chill out. Like why are you always like running around all crazy? Maybe I'm just getting older. I don't know. But Leto goes on to say the young generally are incapable of making hard decisions unless those decisions are associated with immediate violence and the consequent sharp flow of adrenaline. That's the violence you see in Siona. And even old people can have it. I mean, they can cling to it, but the young, they just wallow in it. They just wallow in it. And I was like, yeah, looking around at the world and seeing how everything's going on. I'm like, yeah, that's pretty true. That makes sense. And I've seen it in myself too. When I was younger, just like making very rash decisions. We're gonna do this. So anyways, Mineo arrives at nightfall with Siona, drops her off at a thopter. The only way you can get there is by thopter. And they go to this beautiful overlook in the tower, and they're looking out over the desert in the night sky. And Leto starts talking about how he's like, I get that people think I'm a monster. And honestly, like, I like to talk because I dread the day when I will no longer be able to engage in conversation. Like, he knows he's going to become so worm that he'll lose the ability to speak, which is like, oh my gosh, what a nightmare. What a Cronenberg nightmare. But it's like a slow Cronenberg nightmare that happens over thousands of years. And Siona is super sus. She's not having any of it. She's just like, why am I here? Are you going to kill me? What do you eat? She just gives him 20 questions. Fun fact, Leto eats soil and sand and melange. So we in these few chapters, we get some intel on what he eats. And also, he only has a mouth and lungs to like breathe, just to sustain enough remnant of humanity, and also to talk. So he really doesn't like need to have like lungs and breathing and all this stuff. Like, it's kind of like vestigial almost, but he does need it to talk, so he still has that. And also I thought something that was interesting that he let slip is that he doesn't have a touch sense anymore, except on his face. Like, if you touch his worm body, he can't feel it. Like, he can't, like, he is with his hands, he doesn't like feel anything. Like, it's just like he can feel stuff on his face, but like that's about it. And that's sad. And he's just like sad about it too. He's like, I miss that. I miss being able to touch. And then she asks him, how does time feel? She's asking him all the questions. And all the while she's playing 20 questions with him, he's like slowly dimming the lights, and he's creeping up closer and closer to her until they're just talking by moonlight, and she can like almost just forget that she's talking to a worm. Like, you're just talking to me. I'm just a voice, and we're just talking, and I'm kind of like you. I mean, I'm not, but I want you to forget that I'm like so different. And then she demands the lights to come back up, and he turns on all the lights, and now it's truth time. So there are the official histories, and then there's the oral histories. And, the official sponsored histories aren't necessarily all true. Much like our real life, the official sponsored narratives aren't all true. And so he reveals to her that in the official deal, him and Ghanima were married and they had children, and all the Atreides are descended from them. But in the oral histories, which the rebels and Siona believe, it's Hark al-Ada was really the father of all the Atreides line after Paul. And he's like, yep, that's true. Hark al-Ada is your ancestor. And he's also like, yes, I really do have ancestral memories, which she really still like doesn't really know. And he also tells her that the worst thing that he gave up wasn't sex, but just getting to chill with another human and just vibe as humans. That was the worst thing. Like, he's like, I'm totally different than you guys. I can never just hang out. like we're so different. Like, I can't just vibe with you. This sucks. Like, that's way worse than missing out on sex. And he also scares Siona with the possibility that she could become a worm too. He's like, if I gave you the right amount of spice and we, started getting, and you had the right amount of sand trout, like, you could be a worm. You can be a worm. She's like, oh my God, like, please. And he also reveals that he knows that she took the journals and read them and knows that his capacity for love is his weakness and how much it fucking sucks to watch all these people that he loves die, over thousands of years. I mean, he's loved so many different people and he just watches them age and then die, and some of them die very quickly and some of them die very slowly, and it sucks. And then she comes to the point, well, what right do you have to rule? And Leto is getting really tired of Siona's haughty crap. She's gloating. He's like, ugh, of all the human things, like, that's like one of the things I hate the most. And he tells her, I rule by right of loneliness. All right. There's part freedom, part slavery. I can't be bought off. So that's one thing. Like, you humans can't buy me off to do whatever you want to do. And that I will serve humanity to the best of my abilities, and no one can stop me. Like, none of you guys can stop me. And there's never been a government like mine, ever. And I am solely responsible unto myself. And I watch over you guys through these times where humanity could obliterate itself. So I'm just like holding you guys back from like killing yourselves, essentially. Like, that's the only reason I'm here. And it's interesting. I remember somebody was asking Stanley Kubrick once, like, what he thought the best type of government or leadership would be, and in an interview, and he said that he felt like a benevolent tyrant would be the best, the best that you could hope for. Because it's like, oh, you have someone who can like make sure everything gets done, but like in a good way. And I feel like Leto's the benevolent tyrant, which I'm like, yes, totally. And Siona goes on to tell him that she's like, well, Mineo told me you were tricky with words. He's like, yes. And she's like, well, I'm tired of talking. He's like, also, yes, please stop talking to me, you dum-dum. And he realizes that her doubts, she's primed. She's doubting. She's doubting a little bit, and she's ready for the test. And he lets her know, you're ready, and when we meet again, we will learn what you are really made of, Siona Atreides. Get ready. It's test time. You passed your interview. Congratulations. Now, chapter 38, we have Mineo tries and fails. So Duncan is pissed as usual. He's stomping around after lunch, after his lunch of pseudo meat, which I thought was really funny. I was like, pseudo meat? Is that like a Beyond Burger? Pseudo. I love the name pseudo meat. Anyways, so at lunch, he was eating by himself. Mineo finds him. He sits down with him, uninvited. And he's like, hey, I got a message from Leto to give to you. And he says, it is my bad luck that Duncan, Idaho, should become enamored of Hui Nuri. This mischance must not continue. So Mineo's just like, cut it out, dude. She's Leto's girl. You need to stop. You're going to get us all killed. Please stop. Like, please. Can you just stop? Can you stop? And Duncan's like, I'm not going to stop. We'll see about that. Well, I'm going to see about that right now. Well, I'm going to go talk to him. And he's like, you're going to get killed. That's suicide. Like, what are you doing, man? Duncan starts playing to the Devil's Gallery, which I thought was really interesting, where, you have an audience of people, and so you want them to like hear certain things, and there's all these fish speaker around them in the mess hall, and he says very loudly, the Atreides Dukes, you know what they used to say? And he's like, what? Is it relevant? And he's like, you know what they used to say? They said that your liberties all vanish when you look up to any absolute ruler. And he was like, shut the fuck up. The worm is going to get you. Like, you can't say that in front of all these fish speakers. They're going to tell him, what are you doing? And Idaho is pleased when the fish speakers hear that Mineo refers to Leto as the worm. When he's like, the worm's going to get you. You better fucking shut up. And he says, he is God and we're mortal, Duncan. All right, you need to drop it. And Duncan says, how is it that a God can do evil things? And Mineo's like, I'm out of here. Like, this is heresy. I gotta go. You're fucking killed. I wash my hands of you. And he dips out, and the fish speakers have heard everything. They're gonna go tell Daddy Leto. And so Duncan goes back to his room, and he's wondering if the fish speakers are gonna, when the fish speakers are just gonna show up and drag him to a dungeon. He's looking around for weapons when he gets home, and he's like, everything's useless. It's like, there's nothing in here that you can use to kill Leto. Like, you're so fucked. And the further he goes into his room, who does he find in his room? But Huinari. And she's like, oh, thank God you haven't been harmed yet. I heard you were wilding in the mess hall, and we got to talk. Okay, we got to talk about us, because Mineo's told me to reject you, and I was brought here by some fish speakers to talk some sense into you, because you're going to end up dead if you don't start shutting the fuck up. So I'm the intended bride of the God Emperor, all right? And he's like, so you're going to marry him? She's like, yes. He's like, well, then there's nothing for us to talk about, Hui. And then she's like, except this thing between us. And he's like, what thing? She steps closer. This thing. And he's like, you better leave. You better get out of here. Like, you were asking for it, lady. And she's like, yeah, I am. And I probably should leave, but I'm not gonna. I was designed to please an Atreides, and you are more Atreides than many born to the name. And Duncan's like, this is fucking crazy. And Hui is like, yes. And then they fuck. And I was just like, I was so disappointed in Duncan when it said that during their sexy time, he's like, you're not a virgin. And she's like, nor are you, love. It's just like, what are you complaining right now? Like, Duncan, Idaho? Like, you're upset? Why? Like, get out of here, dude. Like, what is your problem? And then after they have sex, he immediately goes into asking her about her other lovers. It was just like, oh, Duncan, please. Like, please, Duncan, what are you doing? Like, that is so lame. It is so lame. And she's just like, bro, I didn't have other lovers. I just had, like, this one other guy. I was in my teens. He needed me very much. But really, I think it was just like, I felt really bad afterwards, and I felt like it was a test. It was like a fucked up, weird Ixian test, and I thought they were going to be mad at me, but they fucking loved it. They thought it was great. It was kind of a bummer. And she goes on to tell him that we gave joy to each other because that's how it is with love. You know it's love when you want to give joy and damn the consequences, which is exactly what they just did. But, this was great, Duncan. We gave the joy, but this is it. We're never going to fuck again. This is our first and last fuck. And Duncan is like, oh, what? No. And he buries his little boy head in her boobs. And he's like, what if you're pregnant? What if I got you knocked up? And she's like, well, if there's going to be a child, it's going to be a child. And he's like, but he'll know. What are you talking about? And she's like, well, he's going to know anyways because I'm going to tell him. And he's like, what? You're going to tell him? You're going to get us killed. Like, what? And he's just like, no, what are you doing? And she's like, look, don't worry about it. He loves me. He's not going to kill me. It's fine. And he's not going to kill you because he knows that would like really bum me out. And he doesn't want to bum me out. But for real though, I'm going to go marry him. And I'm going to marry him because he needs me more than you do. All right. He's got bigger plans. He's got bigger needs than our petty little like hot fuck thing that we got going on. And I love how she ends the chapter. I never thought it would be easy to serve God, but I just didn't think it would be this hard. Aw, well, yeah, we really is taking that gamble, Davy Sockrocker, for real. It's like, what? Like, oh my God, like, okay. Yeah, they got a hot fuck thing, Jester Feathers, and that's cool, but like, she's got a, she was like designed to be with fucking Leto, and Duncan's over here being a dickhead. Anyways, on to our next chapter. Mineo faces the worm. Mineo faces the worm. Mineo is summoned to the crypt. He's been waiting for this summons all morning he's just been like, oh no, like it finally came after dinner. And when it did come, he just felt like a moment of sheer terror. He's just like, oh, he goes down there. Leto says, I have summoned you because of what my guards tell me. And he doesn't say what. He's playing with him. And Maneo's like, is it about the Duncan, Lord? I don't know. Is it about the Duncan? And he's like, is it about the Duncan? Yeah, of course it's about the fucking Duncan. And how long till I can get a fucking new one? Okay, I'm tired of this Duncan. And he's like, I talked to the Laxu. There's been some problems. It might take as many as 2 years. And he's like, Leto says, do you know what my guards tell me, Maneo? And Maneo internally is like, fuck. Please, God, no. I hope the fish speakers did not tell him about Duncan fucking Huinery. Like, please, God, please. And he diverts it. He plays coy. He's like, did the fish speakers, did they tell you that Duncan questioned a bunch of the guards about their origins and then freaked them out because he kept asking them about their origins even after they told him what they were? You know, he's like desperately trying to change the subject. It's so weird, right? Why do the Duncans do this, Lord? He's like trying his fucking best. This is so weird, right? Let's talk about this. Leto goes off on some vague shit while Maneo is sensing the worm approaching again and is wondering, is it my turn to die down here? There's so many people died in this crypt. Is it my turn? The worm is coming. I'm so scared. This sucks. Leto tells Maneo, you cannot succeed by taking hostages. That is a new form of enslavement. One kind of human cannot own another kind of human. The universe will not permit it. What do you think about that, Maneo? A little pop. This is like a death pop quiz time. I love his little death pop quizzes where he's like, if you don't answer this right, I might smush you. And Maneo fucks up. He says, the Lord's words enlighten me. He's like, enlightened? You are not enlightened, Maneo. Another pop quiz. Tell me what religious institutions perpetuate. It's like sidetrack. Tell me what religious is like. Maneo just starts backing away. He's just like starts to back away, and Leto's like, no, stay where you are. You're not moving. Don't move. You just stay right where you are. Maneo just gives up. He puts his head down in fear and shame. He's just like, I don't know, Lord. I don't know. And Leto says, fine, I'll tell you. The worm recedes a little bit. Religious institutions perpetuate a moral master-servant relationship. They create an arena which attracts prideful human power seekers with all of their nearsighted prejudices. Maneo just like nods in silence. And I love that while he's nodding in silence, he's noting this tumescence that's like under Leto's rings. And he's wondering if like a worm mouth, because like, you know, the crysknives, they're like kind of, you know, they're kind of sparkle and shit. And he's wondering if the worm mouth is just going to open up underneath Leto's face at some point, which is like, Jesus, what a nightmare. Leto gives Maneo another deadly pop quiz, which Maneo can't answer. And he just silently shrugs. He's just like, I don't know, Leto. Like, you fucking tell me. And Leto goes off about being servants unto God, not servants unto servants, and other vague shit before letting it slip that he intended to mate Huinery with Maneo. But now it's too late. And I love that we never find out. Like, I mean, Leto knows. Like, I feel like Leto knows, but they're just dancing around it. Like, they're not even, like, he knows, but he's just, like, doesn't even want to say it because it would make it real. But he's just like, well, I was going to have her mate with you. But it's too late now. Because the dirty Duncan fucked it up. And Maneo is so scared. He's like, Hui? What the fuck? Who's Hui? And he's like, oh, what? Huh? He's like, what? Me, Lord? Like, for real? Like, okay, I don't know. Then the worm takes over without warning, hurls Leto's body off of the cart. He convulses. He's like thrashing around. He's within centimeters of Maneo, who screams and runs out of the crypt. He's like, ah! And Maneo makes a run for it and survives. He survives the worm yet again. But before he makes his exit, Leto calls out to him and says that Siona will be tested tomorrow. So It's like, I may not have smushed you, but your daughter might die, so fuck you. Thanks for not cock blocking. Great work, dude. Good job. Good bad job you did there. Chapter 40. Sayona faces the test. So it's test day, and Sayona and Leto go out into the desert, and Leto is musing on the weather satellites and how he's like, the weather isn't perfect. Like, it's not as perfect. It's not as dry as I'd want it to be. But then he thinks such perfection is a machine fantasy which faltered under human management. And I think that's something that a lot of us, we forget, where it's just like, the perfection is a machine fantasy. And we need to recognize that. Like, I love that. I thought that was really good. Anyways, he thinks it's funny that the Ixians thought that he was going to control the planets through the weather satellites, because he installed weather satellites throughout the Imperium and like gave everyone really great weather. But the Ixians thought he was going to punish people with it and cause storms and shit. But no, he's like, my controls are more subtle. I'm not going to punish people with fucking storms. Get out of here. Mineo has prepared Sayona in an authentic Fremen stillsuit, and he has explained their inner workings to her. And he's telling her that she's got to find a way to live with the presence of the worm, or she might not make it back from the desert. So you better figure it out real quick, or you might die. Leto is slithering ahead of her, and he's making her a little golden path of compressed sand for her to follow, which the Fremen, when they would find worm tracks, they would call it God's gift to the weary. Because that sand, you know how like you're walking on the beach, and it's just like, it's really hard to walk in sand. It's just like, it's very tiring. And so if you find some compacted sand, it's like really nice. So Sayona makes it deep enough into the desert, and she goes to the top of the dune and is taken aback by the vastness of the Sarir. And she is feeling kind of abandoned in this really dangerous place. And then she starts up with her questions, her rude-ass questions, asking Leto about his religion. Like, what's your personal religion? What do you believe in? And he's just like, shut the fuck up and get on my back. And let's take a worm ride in the desert. And she's like, what? And he's like, just get on. Shut up. So she does. And he's slithering around, and she's like on his back. And it sounds really fun. Honestly, I would take a worm ride in the desert. I think that'd be really cool. And while they're riding around, Leto's thinking, man, if she dies, she dies. But we gotta get her figured out here. And Sayona is actually like kind of getting into the ride. Like at first she's like a little tense about it, but then she's like, hey, this is kind of cool. And the old memories, he's trying to awaken without using the spice and her ancestral memories. He's just trying to awaken in a very subtle way the old Fremen memories. It's like, hey, let me just give you a little taste of how the Fremen used to roll around the desert. First of all, we're going to take you to the desert. And second of all, we're going to have you ride around on a worm. It's not the same, but it's as close as we can give it to you. And while they're running around, he starts giving her a history lesson about the Fremen past. And he's talking about the equality between men and women originated here in the desert. And she's, says some smart ass shit about the fish speakers denying women and men are equal. And he says it's true that men and women have different evolutionary demands upon them. But with the Fremen, though, there was an interdependence. That fostered equality out here where questions of survival can become immediate, which I thought was really cute. And she goes, and why have you brought me here? She's so rude. Why have you brought me here? And knowing that she's sus and thinks that, like, he's just going to drop her off in the middle of the desert and then, like, slither away and she's just me fucked, he's like, it's fine. Just get down off my back and I'll tell you. And she's just like, oh, no. Is this when he's going to leave me here? He says, no, it's fine. Just get off my back. Eat some snacks. Your dad packed you some snacks. Now that you've felt your past riding out here into the desert with me, now you've got to be sensitized to your future and to the golden path. And you and we're going to walk together out of the desert. And he's like, well, you don't walk. And he's just like, yeah, it's a figure of speech, bitch. Like, you're going to walk, okay? Like, I'm going to slither out of here, but you know what the fuck I mean, so shut up. And he tells her how there's, it's like, well, can you see the tracks? Like, can you see our tracks where we came from? She's like, no. And it's like, well, you can't really go back then, can you? You can't follow the tracks, even if you wanted to. You can't leave. And even if you did make it to the little citadel, there's nothing there for you to eat. There's nothing there for you to drink. There's nothing for you there that could help you survive. So the only way out is in. And by the way, Sayona is not using her face flap so she can keep blabbing her dumb questions to Leto. And eventually she's like, well, fuck, like, oh, like starts realizing the gravity of her situation. Wait, like, I don't, like, the only water I have is from the still suit. Like, we don't have water. Like, how long is it going to take us to get out of here? Like, we only have this dried food in my pack. And Leto calls her attention to the fact that she's saying we and us, not I and me. And he asks her, could it be that we are interdependent? Huh? You know, we're traveling buddies now. We're a little bit interdependent. And he says that he will share his precious knowledge of the desert to keep her alive. He will share that precious knowledge with her. But in return, she must find something to share with him. And she goes on to be a smartass and says, an agreement cannot be bought with threats. Like, an agreement bought with threats is no agreement. I didn't agree to come out here. And he's just like, well, you know what? Tough titties. You're an Atreides. Okay, get over it. Let's go down to this dune shadow, and we're going to wait out the day here because it uses less water to travel by night. So he's like, okay, shut up. I'm going to share my knowledge with you. Come on down here, dum-dum, so you don't get too dehydrated. Chapter 41. Mineo beats Duncan's ass. Mineo really has, like, Mineo's in trouble. Mineo tries to, like, stop this. Mineo almost gets killed by his boss, and now it's Mineo's time. Shit rolls downhill. Now it's Mineo's time to beat Duncan's ass, who's been causing him all of these problems. So Duncan's been looking for Mineo. Angry Duncan's been looking for Mineo all day. He finally finds him in a sietch-like corridor used mostly as quarters for young fish speakers. And on his way there, he glimpses some lesbian action going on between some fish speakers behind some hanging fabric doors. And that even aggravates him further. Duncan starts going off on Mineo once he finds him, asking his rude, dumb questions like, where is Leto? And Mineo's like, bro, like, why are you trying to die right now? Like, I don't get it. And Idaho's like, don't make me use force to get you to talk. He's such an asshole. Mineo's just, like, internally sighing. He's just like, I would not advise that. I would really not advise that. But I'll tell you, okay? He's in the desert. He's with Siona. She's being tested. He's like, when will he be back? And he's just like, I don't know, man. I don't know. Like, what is your problem? And Duncan says, I'm sick of this place, these people, these fish speakers. Peh. And Mineo's like, look, Duncan, it's perfectly normal for adolescent females, as well as males, to have feelings of physical attraction towards members of their own sex. And most of them will grow out of it. It's just part of our heritage, okay? Like, you just gotta let it happen, all right? Just, like, calm down about it. And Duncan's not having it. He's like, it should be stamped out. And he's just like, suppressing it is just going to strengthen it. Okay. Like, suppressing it just like no, that is not the answer here. And, you know, I thought about that a lot too, like in our own culture. I mean, things have changed so much since I've been on this planet. But growing up, it was just like, yeah, everything was just very suppressed. You know, it's just like if you wanted to fuck around with somebody of the same sex as you, like growing up, like it was just like, especially for men. For women, it's more accepted, but for men, it's just like so taboo, and it means like, oh, you're in this box and you're gay and you're a gay person, and everyone freaks out. And it's as somebody who's very like sexually fluid, like I don't get these labels that everybody like wants to like have, you know. And I thought about Sailor Moon when I was reading this, because you have Sailor Uranus and Sailor Neptune, and they're in a lesbian relationship, but they're also supposed to be teenagers. And that's also something in Japan that is accepted, where it's like, oh, when you're younger, sometimes you date people of the same sex, but they're like, oh, well, most people end up growing out of it. Some people don't, but they allow people to explore that. And by allowing people to explore that, then they can figure it out one way or another. And then it also made me think of this conversation I had with somebody who was talking about their sexuality, and, you know, they were living as a gay man, and they were just like saying like, man, like, you know, when I was growing up, everyone was telling me I was gay before I even knew what the fuck was going on. And just like, and I always choose the hard path, and just to say kind of fuck you to them, like I just really like went with it and doubled down on it. But like, he was just like, but maybe if I hadn't had that pressure, like, who knows? Like, I don't know, you know? And I was just like, I don't know either. That's a really interesting question. That's really fucking Thanks for talking to me about that. You don't hear many of those conversations, but I thought all this was like really interesting, especially how people are always like, oh, this is so anti-gay. And it's like, well, no, this part isn't, but I don't think you could say this part is. Isn't that only for girls in Japan? I'm not sure, Jake Higgs, if that's only applies to girls or if that also applies to men. That's a really good question. I'm not sure about that. But I guess for girls, it's okay. But again, I hate that for guys. I just hate that for you guys, that like you can't experiment without feeling like you're put into this box eternally. And what does that mean? It's like, who cares? Like, just figure it out. Like, play around. Like, whatever. It's fine. Like, again, as somebody who's very sexually fluid, it's just like, I don't get the big deal. But everyone likes to just be like, kind of like put themselves in a box and just like stay there. And it's just like, I don't know, whatever. Going back to the thing here. Where was I? Anyways, okay. So Duncan goes in again about Siona and the test, and he's just giving Mineo so much shit. And Mineo is over this foolishness, and he calls him he's thinking to himself, how long do I have to deal with this dangerous antique human? Like, what a sick burn. Duncan switches gears. How did the other Duncans die? I need to know. And Mineo deflects and warns Duncan to chill. He's like, you gotta chill out. I'm really stressed right now. Like, my daughter might die. Okay, my daughter might die. Okay, I got real problems. And I'm also stressed because of you. Okay, I almost got smushed by the worm because of you. And you need to get off my nuts, and you need to grow up. You need to grow the fuck up, okay? And Duncan, I'm not some child. And he's like, Duncan, if the demands on your flesh are for maturity, but something holds you in adolescence, quite nasty behavior develops. You better take your hand off that knife. And he's like, are you saying I'm gay? And he's like, what? No, I'm not. Get off of this, get off of this, Duncan. He's like, these two women were kissing. It's not important. Youth explores its potential in many ways. Like, you gotta chill out on this shit. And Duncan is just about to explode. He's like, I'm glad to learn about you, Mineo. And Mineo has the sickest burn. Yeah, well, I've learned about you several times. Okay? Several times. I know all about you. And goes on to say that if something blocks our evolution, we can transfer our potential in pain, seeking it and giving it. Adolescents are particularly vulnerable. And Duncan, essentially, he's saying, like, Duncan, you are in a state of arrested development because you, and I can tell you this because you decided to fuck Queenery, and you did it just to hurt Leto. Like, yeah, you did it for yourself, but really, you did it to cause Leto pain. And you're also causing Hui pain, and you're also causing yourself pain. Okay, this was a really bad decision, and you're still a kid. You're still a kid. I know Duncan be like, no homo, bro. It's like, totally, Tavy. And Duncan is not having this. I mean, he doesn't want that truth bomb. He does not want to hear that truth bomb. Duncan's like, I should cut your... Mineo's just like, shut the fuck up. He's like almost using the voice. But he has so much command in his voice that Idaho immediately kind of obeys him. And then he's like, oh, Mineo's like, I'm sorry I yelled at you. I'm sorry, dude. My daughter might die out there, okay? Like, and there's nothing I can do about it. There's nothing I can do about it. So, like, I don't give a fuck about your petty shit right now. Like, I just don't care. And then Duncan goes on to say the dumbest shit ever. He's like, well, I guess I'll make an allowance for you because you have personal problems. And he's like, Mineo's just like, you're making allowances for me? I'm making allowances for you, you fucking idiot. And Duncan essentially goes off to say, perverts never prosper. All right, perverts never prosper. And Mineo says to him, listen up, loser. Homosexuals have been among the best warriors in our history, the berserkers of last resort. They were among our best priests and priestesses. Celibacy was no accident in religion. It is also no accident that adolescents make the best soldiers. Military commanders have known about the perverted displacement of sex into pain for thousands upon thousands of centuries. Violence requires that you inflict pain and suffer it. How much more manageable a military force driven to this by its deepest urgings. Duncan's just like, you guys are all monsters. Mineo, you're being manipulated. And Mineo tells him, he's like, Duncan, you don't have the guts to pay the price that Leto asks, okay? So, like, you needed to step off. And that really is the trigger. Idaho goes nuts. He in a blurred motion, he draws his knife. He's trying to stab Mineo. Mineo just easily sidesteps him in like Matrix bullet time and trips him. And then Duncan just lands face down. And Idaho is just like, the fuck just happened? Like, he moved really fast. Like, that's so fast. And he also is freaked out because he's like, I just tried to kill an Atreides. Like, oh my God, what's going on right now? I'm freaking out. And he's like, how did you move so fast, Mineo? And Mineo then gives him the sickest burn of all time. He says, he's been breeding us for a long time, Duncan, strengthening many things in us. He has bred us for speed, for intelligence, for self-restraint, for sensitivity. You're just an older model. Just older model, dude. Can't keep up with this. And Duncan's just like, Oh, it's crazy. It's crazy. But Duncan had it coming. Honestly, Duncan had it coming. I'm glad somebody put him in his place. He needed to be put in his place. He's just stomping around everywhere. He's killing me. He's gonna get everybody killed. Let's go on. I know he's obsolete, Alrock 1. Totally. Just like, oh, whatever, Anyways, moving on to chapter 42, we've got traveling buddies. So Siona and Leto, they wait out the day. And Leto teaches her to protect herself under a blanket of sand in the noonday heat. And when it cools off in the afternoon, she kind of snugs up to him for some warmth. And Homegirl is still not using her face flap. And Leto is just like trying to indirectly signal to her to like use that shit. And she's just not getting it. And in the late afternoon, he starts regaling her with songs of the long trek that had been lost to time. Here's some songs from the vault that nobody knows about but me. They bond over a mutual love of this song called Liet's March. And I love that he's like singing, like, oh, let me sing to you. Like, oh, it's so cute. And, but then he's like asking her, he's like, so, she's like, this is a weird song. Like, why do people like journey to this? And he's like, they like to dissect it, She's like, well, dissect it. What does that mean? He's like, well, like, what do you think it means? Like, what do you think the song means? And she's like, she gives this weak sauce answer. She's like, it's just a song. And he's just like, it's just a song. Like, you're killing me. And I like that she replies with insouciance. That's a new word for me. I had to look up insouciance, which means a casual lack of concern or indifference. She replies, just tell me what it means, dude. Just tell me. And he says that an insect has no more freedom from its hive than we have freedom from our past. She's like, well, you know what? I like dancing songs anyways. So, and Leto's just like eye rolling her, just like, oh God, this girl's the worst. He starts telling her about the Fremen marriage dance of women. He's like, well, you like dancing? Well, let me tell you about this. And night is almost here. He's like, all right, let's take a look around. We'll see if anyone shares our desert with us. And she goes to the top of a hill and she's looking around. There's nobody. But there is a bird. She's like, what does a bird eat out here? And he's just like, anything that's dead or nearly dead. Which is, again, another hint, like, put on that face flap. You could be dead. That bird might be trying to eat you because, like, they know that you're being an idiot and you're going to die, but she still doesn't get it. They get moving, and Siona intuitively chooses to go in the correct direction, which Leto finds amusing. He's like, oh, yes, her Fremen memories are, like, starting to, like, pick up. She knows where she's supposed to be going, and she's leading herself, but she's trusting Leto to confirm. So she's like, this is the right way, right? And he's like, yeah, you're good. Leto senses the turmoil in her. She has begun that intense loyalty to traveling companions, which desert folk always trusted. So that's his whole thing with this test. It's like he's taking her out into the desert. He's just like making them interdependent, where they like really have to like share like some real fucking moments and some real intimacy with each other. And fun fact, being out in the desert quickens the movement towards Leto's final metamorphosis. So even though he loves going out in the desert and like worming around and like slithering everywhere, like it just makes like his transformation happen faster. So that's like a reason why he doesn't do it more. And he keeps trying to signal her about the face flap. She keeps not getting it. She's arguing about his ordered mating. She's like, well, I heard that you ordered my parents to mate. And he's like, yeah, I did, yeah. And she's like, well, I'm not gonna fuck Duncan. I know you want me to fuck him, and I'm not gonna do it. And Leto just was like, are you thirsty? She's like, what? He's like, thirsty people speak of water, not of sex. And again, he's just like, your face flap. Shouldn't you put that on your stupid mouth and shut up? She's just like, doesn't seal it. She's still going. Later on, they're in the flatlands on this rock. They're off the sand and they're just on some rock. And he tries to tell her, here in the flatlands, here's where you really learn to think of heaven. You really learn to think heaven must be the sound of running water and relief from that endless wind. Isn't it windy? And like, are you thirsty? She's putting her face flap. And she's still not getting it. And he's just like, she's going to die. She's going to die. There's nothing I can do about it. And they keep trekking through the night. And in the morning, Siona is like really exhausted. Like she's showing some real signs of exhaustion. And she leans up against him. And she's just like listening to his insides. She's like, all the fight's going out of her. She's just listening to the rumbling of his insides. And he's telling her, he's like, well, fire never goes out in this bitch. Like, I always got a fire going. You look like you're cold. And she's like, I might be a little bit cold, yeah. And Leto offers her, and this is the cutest, a warm little hammock made out of his own worm body. He like kind of pushes a segment out and pushes one in. So it creates like this little section that she can like tuck her little body into, and then it's warm and she can just like take a little nap in there. And she accepts it without hesitation. She's not even just like, oh, I hate this guy, I'll never sleep in his body. She's like, no, like, that sounds great. Okay, sorry, I'm gonna go to sleep now. And while she's sleeping, he's looking down on her and he's just so worried. He's like, she is gonna die. I feel so much pity for her. And he's trying to block out the pity he's feeling, because like Hui is like really brought up all these emotions for him, and he's feeling like a lot more emotional than he normally does, and he's trying to block it out by retreating to his inner memories. He's deliberately selecting mistakes of our common past to review, to remind himself of consequences and the lessons you learn from consequences. And but as he nears becoming a full worm, he finds it harder and harder to make inhuman decisions. So he used to make fucked up decisions that weren't fun to make, or decisions that people would accuse him of being inhuman. He would make those earlier on in his career, like, no problem. But, like, the more he turns into the worm, he's just like, God, this sucks. Like, I don't want to make these decisions. And as his humanity slipped away, he found himself filled with more and more human concerns. So that is it for session 6. For session 7, you need to read pages 460 through 528 in this copy of the book. And if you're not reading from this copy of the book, the last sentence of the last chapter of this section is, I may be the only religious consciousness in the empire because I am truly alone, so I cannot pray. Again, another poor Leto. We're ending on another poor Leto quote. That's it for today. Thanks everybody for watching, and don't forget to support this channel when you join patreon.com/DanikaXIX. I want to thank these amazing people for all of their generosity and support. And also when you buy merch from DanikaXIX.BigCartel.com. And so now we are going to go to our questions and answers section. For those of you who want to view the questions and answers section on YouTube, you can come here to twitch.tv/DanikaXIX and check out the Dune Club Session 6 video on demand and watch it there. Thank you, everybody. I'll see you next week. Mwah.